Test, test. Test 1, 2.
Hey, Rose, can you hear me? It's John Ferretti. Okay, thanks.
Test, test. Test, test. Test, test. Test, test. Test, test.
Yeah.
We will be starting in about 5 minutes. It's schools, school's just beginning, so some of the legislators are running a few minutes behind schedule. But we will start in 5 minutes whether they're here or not. Good morning, everyone. And I'd ask you to please rise and join us in the pledge to our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'd ask the clerk, please, to take the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Legislator Joshua Lafazan, he will arrive shortly. Legislator Arnold Drucker. Here. Thank you. Ranking Member Delia DeRiggi-Whitten. Good morning. Legislator C. William Gaylord III. He will be here as well. Legislator Laura Schaefer. Vice Chairman James Kennedy. Chairwoman Rosemarie Walker. Thank you, ma'am. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And as I said, the other legislators will be joining us shortly. Good morning, everyone. I'm Rose Walker, and I'm the chairperson of the Health and Social Service Committee. Before I begin, I would like to thank Nancy Nunziata, Commissioner of the Department of Social Services, and her staff for attending today's legislative hearing. First and foremost, I would like to make it clear that this hearing is not about the general administration of emergency shelter services in Nassau County or the placement of individuals in emergency shelters. Rather, the purpose of this hearing is to obtain answers regarding the procedure that the county followed regarding emergency shelter services at 120 Jericho Turnpike, Jericho. Specifically, we will explore the selection of the provider, Community Housing Innovations Incorporated, on June 20th, 2020, and the real estate transaction that followed nearly 1 month later. Upon initial review, the series of events makes little sense and requires an explanation from the administration. The planned emergency shelter at 120 Jericho Turnpike, Jericho, seemingly appeared out of nowhere. The county did not notify the residents, municipalities, or elected officials of the property's new use, and the surrounding community was left with many questions. Thus far, the lack of transparency surrounding this location, 120 Jericho Turnpike, Jericho, has been troubling. Residents deserve a government that conducts business in an open and transparent manner. Today, it is the goal of this committee to educate residents on the facts and shed light on the events that comprise this transaction. Hopefully, with the cooperation of the administration, these goals can be achieved. Finally, please be advised that the duration of this hearing is 2 hours and will end at noon, or a few minutes after since we started a few minutes late, but as committee meetings for the legislature are scheduled to begin at 1 o'clock. As a result, we may not get to hear public comment from everyone in the chamber, but we will do our very best. And we will stop at a certain point, our questioning, to let the public have time to comment. And now I'm going to ask Legislator Drucker. He would like to have a few words.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. I'd like to start off this morning by stating that I recognize the need to clearly understand the process that was followed in the licensing application for the Jericho Family Support Center, a transitional housing facility in a largely commercial district in Jericho. I think we can all agree that the process leading up to today's hearing, one that dates back to 2017 with this particular provider, was woefully flawed and inadequate. And there was no one that was more disappointed and outraged than I was when I first learned of it at a school board meeting in late July. There is no excuse for the elected county legislator of this community to be excluded from this process, and I expressed my sentiments to the current administration immediately upon learning of this initiative. This process must be changed, and whether it can be changed here at the county level or at the state level, I'm not sure. But one thing I think we can all agree on is that this process was not transparent and cannot continue. However, I cannot allow my displeasure with a flawed process to prevent me from supporting a plan that I know will provide life-affirming and potentially life-saving resources and essential services that will help families in need get back on their feet during one of the harshest economic downturns of our lifetime. And even if we weren't in a pandemic, we must never turn our backs on those who are less fortunate than we are, or who may be suffering from certain challenging circumstances. Helping them is not just a statutory obligation of our government. It's a moral obligation that must never be forgotten or relegated to a lower priority. When we examine the verifiable facts here, rather than listening to the half-truths, the inaccuracies, innuendo, and scurrilous personal attacks against me and others, there can only be one conclusion reached with respect to the planned transitional housing in Jericho, and that is to support the goal of helping unfortunate families by providing them with robust and comprehensive services that will achieve a level of stability and progress that facilitates their return as contributors to our communities rather than burdens, languishing in unhealthy squalor, which they are in their present inhumane conditions. We can and must do better for these families. Thank you.
Commissioner, would you like to begin? I don't know if you would like to introduce who you have with you, your staff that's with you.
Yep. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Good morning. So to my left is Rudy Carminati, who is our attorney at the Department of Social Services, works for the County Attorney's Office. To my right is Deputy Commissioner Lorraine Baum, who oversees Housing and Homeless Services as one of her responsibilities for the department. And to her right is Doug Russell, who is in charge of our procurement and quality management process over at the department. Okay? All right. So, good morning, Chairwoman Walker and Ranking Member Delia DeRiggi-Whitten, and members of the committee, and Legislator Bino, who I see has joined us. Thank you for having me here today. It's my hope that at the end of this hearing, you'll have a clear understanding of what the Jericho project is and the county's role in that project. But before I get started, I wanted to provide some data and an overview of the state policy to help frame the discussion. So Nassau County has experienced a steady rise in homelessness over the last decade, and in the past 5 years, the numbers have doubled. 31% of the homeless households on Long Island are single adults, and 69% are families with children. We currently, as of today, we are housing 1,300 people in our shelter system here in Nassau County. This includes 250 families that have a total of 500 children. So 1,300 overall, 250 of the 1,300 are families, and among those families are 500 children. That's who's currently in our shelter system. There are 44 shelters currently in Nassau County. 26 of them are family shelters, and 18 are single shelters. The interesting thing about this is that except for 4 of the shelters, right, we have 44, except for 4, all of the other shelters, almost 98%, are in minority-majority communities in Nassau County. The average length of stay for a family in a motel, you should know, is 717 days. That's almost 2 years. While the average length of stay in some of our smaller shelters is 147 days, so a vast difference. So Nassau County Department of Social Services acts as an agent of New York State. And our job is to assess eligibility and administer temporary assistance to all New York State eligible residents. And temporary assistance not only includes housing, but it includes things like TANF and Medicaid, child care, and all of those other services that come under the umbrella of our department. Now, the Division of Shelter Oversight and Compliance, which is part of New York State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, they're the ones that are responsible for certifying and inspecting publicly funded homeless shelters for families and adults throughout the state. They are also responsible for the development of agency policies in accordance with state regulations that govern the programmatic and the physical plant standards of the state. So essentially, the state is who lays out the mandates that we have to follow as the local social service district. Temporary housing assistance is provided temporarily to eligible, and I emphasize the word eligible because not everybody who comes to our doors may be eligible for housing. But for anyone who is eligible, temporary housing has to be provided to them. It is a benefit of the temporary assistance program, known as public assistance, and applicants are evaluated based on their income, their resources, their last known address, their legal status, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to do all of that in order to determine whether someone is even eligible for temporary housing. If a person is deemed eligible, we must offer housing to that individual. And not only do we have to offer housing, but it has to be offered that same day. So we can never say to someone, yes, you're eligible for homeless housing, but sorry, we don't have a bed. We absolutely, with that same day, must provide that service, that benefit to them. Now, OTDA had released Administrative Directive 94 ADM 20, entitled Preventing Homelessness and Providing Assistance to Homeless Persons. This came out in 1994. This directive states that each local district must have a procedure to ensure that homeless persons or persons in danger of becoming homeless can apply for temporary housing assistance whenever such housing is needed and they are eligible. This directive makes it a requirement for the social service district to house someone on the same day. The mandate to provide services, emergency shelter, I should say, is also contained in Social Service Law 23E. Let me quote that. It states, quote, because the local departments function as agencies of the state and not of their respective counties, they may not substitute their own interpretation of state regulations or their own judgment for that of the state agency. Indeed, the local departments may be sanctioned for failing to comply with state agency directives, end quote. What this means is that we at DSS administer a New York State benefit under New York State mandates. We do not own, we do not control, nor do we operate any of the shelters. We administer what is a benefit to eligible homeless families and individuals under state law. Nassau, again, is under state mandate. When I came into my job as commissioner, which is a little less than a year ago, I understood that Nassau County had no certified homeless shelters and was spending a tremendous amount of money on motel placements. The motels offer nothing. They offer a room. That's it. They don't offer case management. They don't offer wraparound services such as education, job development, employment, child care, zero. So we have been paying for a long time lots of money for a room. And I have some cost comparisons which I can also go over with you. So that brings me to the Hampton Inn, the Jericho Family Support Center. I came to learn of the Hampton Inn project late last year, shortly after I became commissioner, based on, and it was CHI who brought the concept to me, Community Housing Innovations. It was them. Based on the historical information that they shared with me, CHI said that they had been in discussion with the previous DSS commissioner regarding the Hampton Inn in Jericho. CHI apparently had submitted a preliminary plan to the previous administration, and for whatever reason it didn't go anywhere. So what they did is they dusted off that plan and submitted a new plan to me for consideration of the Hampton Inn. And what they proposed was that they would convert the Hampton Inn, which, by the way, we had already been using to house homeless families. We had at least 25 or 30 families in that motel at the time. So we were using it much like we use many of the other motels throughout the county. And so they were suggesting that it be converted to a New York State certified transitional housing facility. Now, just so that you know, a transitional housing facility refers to a supportive but temporary type of accommodation that is meant to bridge the gap from homelessness to permanent housing by offering structure, supervision, and other support services. The goal of a temporary transitional housing facility is really to move families from homelessness into permanent housing, and ultimately to get people off the system. So we don't want people to re-enter the system. We really want to work with them, provide intense services so they and their families could eventually settle and go on and live a productive life. CHI's plan at the time called for a private developer who would be purchasing the property and then was going to lease it to CHI for use. CHI also shared with me, and I had actually known from my previous job, that they had successfully done this exact same model in Comac. I think it was either a Howard Johnson's or a Holiday Inn that they reconverted to a state-certified family transitional housing facility, and that facility has been working very well. So they shared that with me. In addition, CHI, we knew, had been operating a couple of small shelters in Nassau County for the past 12 years. So they were a known provider to us here in the county, and based on all the information I had received, they were a very good provider. There was currently, and there is currently, a memorandum of understanding with CHI that is dated May 1st, 2017 through April 30th, 2022. Right? So they have a 5-year MOU with us that's still in effect. According to Section 3D of the MOU, any amendments to the MOU, including the addition of new locations, would be done through a letter of consent. So that language is embedded in the MOU. With respect to the Jericho Family Sports Center, we were following the procedure that was in place and ensuring that they were meeting with state requirements and mandates. This same procedure, where a letter of consent is used to add a new location, has been used for years and had been used time and again. And actually, in my short time, there were other letters of consent that I signed off on for a few other current providers who were either going to be adding a new home or a new property to their current MOU. I believe at the time that I was looking at CHI's MOU, they had two properties on it. They had 2 properties already with us, so Jericho was going to be a 3rd property. So we followed the exact procedure that we've been using, which was embedded in the MOU. And as I stated, you know, the goal here really was to take a look at our motel system. Motel's been used for many years to house the county's homeless population. It's actually one of the premier modes of sheltering people that we've been using. The aim of this project and why it was so different was to reduce and hopefully eliminate the use of the motels, and particularly to now bring the same families who were living a couple of blocks away in a motel to a facility that was clean, well-maintained, had 24-hour supervision, and had a host of wraparound services, because the goal, again, is to get them, to move them out. What you should know is that the length of stay for CHI's transitional housing facilities is 6 to 9 months, whereas the length of stay in Nassau County's motels is 2 years. All right, so a very big difference. Finally, just a last word. Please note that effective January of 2023, all homeless shelters in New York State must be certified by the state. That is a new regulation that came out. This means that all shelters, regardless of how big or small, they must comply with New York State OTDA Part 900 regulations, and those are the regulations that govern homeless shelters. These regulations elevate the standard by which homeless shelters administer services. And the Jericho Family Support Center would be the first one that we have on Nassau County. None of our shelters currently are certified by the state. Now, we are going through the process also with all of our shelter providers. Some of them are going to be able to be certified and some of them won't. The Part 900 regulations, if any of you have had to take a look at them, they're pretty stringent in terms of what the state requires for them to give certification. So that's that's what I wanted to present to you. I'm certainly happy now if you have questions for me, questions for my staff, happy to assist. And thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I just want to make sure the clerk got our other legislators that arrived. Mike, you noticed the other legislators arrived? Okay. You're welcome. So I'm just going to start with, so the reason we chose this vendor to do this is because you had a connection with this vendor already, and they do other work in Nassau County.
Yeah, they've worked on other shelters, and we have this all the time. You should know that we have what's called a rolling application process, which apparently was approved when back in. I'm going to let Doug speak a little bit to this.
Hi, Doug Russell. We have a rolling application process that was approved around 2011, 2012. The reason for that is because we had a flat rate system in place where we paid a flat rate, so it wasn't a competitive procurement process. It was really to find qualified people. And so we have a committee of people who receive these proposals, and we evaluate them, we rate them, and then the ones that we believe would be a viable shelter, we'll make a recommendation to the administration as to whether or not we think that they should be opened.
Now, that's for a new provider, which we have all the time. We have people who write to us all the time and are interested in opening a shelter. You know, I have a house, I have this, I have that. This was different in the sense that, first of all, CHI came to us. And then what we do is we essentially act as the go-between between the nonprofit and the state. Because at the end of the day, we don't approve anything. We can't certify a shelter. We can't pick a shelter. And in fact, I have the new regulations that now are in effect, which would affect the Jericho project. And right here, this is through the OTDA, it says, prior to submission of any operational plan for a shelter for families, the Social Service District must obtain preliminary approval from OTDA for the establishment of such a facility. So we essentially may get the request, and then we pass that request on to the state. The state has to do the inspections. The state has to decide if they think it's an appropriate facility. The state also decides the final budget amount. So again, if a provider submits a budget to us and says this is what we think it'll cost, we take that information, we look at it, but ultimately we send it to the state and they make the final decisions. And that's why I had mentioned that, you know, we don't control, we don't own any shelters, and we don't operate any shelters. We are really the conduit by which the nonprofit or the provider gets ultimate certification or not from the state. Yeah. And the other thing, and Rudy just reminded me, which is true, we never ever pick locations. The locations are brought to us. We would not know if somebody has a building somewhere or someone, wanted to place something somewhere. So we never ever pick a location. Those locations are given to us.
So now, what is the amount that is payment?
Yeah. Okay.
What is that amount?
Yeah. So
that we are paying for this.
Yeah. So let me just we did a short and sweet comparison between the motels and the potential Jericho shelter, right? So on average, and please keep in mind this is an average, our hotel rates throughout the county, they range anywhere from $110 a night to $300 a night, okay? So we took the average of $145 a night. So if we were paying for a family of 4 to stay in a motel for 717 days, because that's how long, on average, our families stay in motels, it would cost $103,965 per family. All right? Now, when you look at the Jericho project and CHI, again, Community Housing Innovations, their length of stay is between 6 and 9 months. Their rate, which is approved by the state, again, this is not our rate, that's the state's rate, is $225.63 per night. So it's not a per person rate, it's a per unit rate. If a family of 4 were to stay in one of those units for 6 months, 180 days, it would be $40,613. If they stayed there the maximum of 9 months, it would be $60,920. So clearly, it is a much cost-effective model. And the other big difference is, remember, we are paying over $100,000 per family now to stay in a motel up to 2 years with absolutely no services. There's no case management. There's no child care. There's no job development. There's no education. We don't really know what they're doing because we don't monitor them. This setting has 24-hour security. Staff is there around the clock. It's case managed. They're going to have an on-site daycare center. They'll have folks doing education. They'll have housing workers that help find housing for people. So, again, not only is it costing us less money than the hotels, but people will also be getting services. And at the end of the day, when you think about the fact that we have 500 kids in our system, and these are children under the age of 18, it certainly is a whole lot better for children to be homeless for 6 to 9 months than it is to be almost 2 years. So, I mean, when you look at all of that, the project just makes sense, and it certainly benefits the families that are in our care.
You know, I just want to say, and you and I have spoken about this many times. I mean, I can't even imagine families living in a hotel room for, you know, it's nice to go on vacation and, you know, even sometimes you put a little more in the room because you have 4 kids and they're too little to separate rooms or whatever, and you stay in one place. I can't imagine that. I especially can't imagine it during COVID, where you had people for, you know, that length of time. It was difficult dealing with 4 grandchildren in my house, trying to do homeschooling every day in my house, let alone if you were in a 1-bedroom, you know, 1 hotel room. And again, as Legislator Drucker said, I mean, I do believe this is much better for our families, the services they will get, and whatever. Again, it's just, now you said the state has to come down, the state has to see what it's like, what the facility is like, is this agreeable, whatever. So obviously there was a process done for them. Unfortunately, that process for us as legislators, I mean, I knew nothing until there was a press conference, and I chair this committee. So when I start getting phone calls, and you kind of look like deer in the headlights, like, I don't know what you're talking about, you know, then you're doing research, you're playing catch up, and it puts us all in a bad situation. Obviously, like I said, if the state had time to make sure this is a good place, this good facility, you know, whatever there's going to have to be done. I know that in the MOU, it was a small amount difference, but it was $222.85 per room. And now it's a different price.
Yeah, because the state reviewed, CHI had made some amendments to the budget, and the state approved like $2 more or something.
So then you have to do...
It's $225.63.
And now you have to put a new...
We have to put that in. Yep.
MOU together, okay.
Yep.
And who pays that?
It's really state. The state that pays it. Essentially, again, it's a pass-through. So it's not It's not on the county's dime. This is money that comes from the state to us. We paid a vendor. I mean, that's what we do.
When this project was going to take place and the site was and like you said, you don't choose a site, whatever, but did you reach out to the school district? Did you reach out to the municipality? Did you reach out? I know you didn't reach out to us.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
did you reach out to the local fire department? That now it's a different situation for them. Did all that happen?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that I had a meeting with the school superintendent, I think it was January. It was January. But that was like a meet and greet, right? So we kind of reached out to each other because I was new and he wanted to meet me. And also he knew that there had already been, because of the motels in the area, there were a couple of kids. I think there were 10 kids at the time in his school district. And we were talking about, so we met at my office, and we were talking about homeless children and what services Jericho could provide, et cetera, et cetera. And I mentioned to him at that time that we were looking, and that the provider and estate was looking at the Jericho, the Hampton Inn. And at that time, it was a thought. It wasn't, there was nothing formal about it. So, but I did mention it to Hank, and I told him I would let him know and keep him posted if the project developed. But then what happens is, somewhere, February, everybody's life goes up in the air with COVID. And at that time, really at the department, this project went on a back burner because we really had to turn our attention to providing emergency services to people in the community. Our food stamp applications quadrupled, our applications for temporary assistance. We had people on the verge of eviction. So we really spent much of February through at least June really kind of full on looking at what folks in the county need in terms of emergency services. The other thing we had to develop really quickly was an isolation site because we had homeless folks that were affected by COVID and what to do there, right? They couldn't no longer stay in a shelter because, you didn't want to pass on any infection. So we feverishly, and really I have to give credit to my deputy commissioner who really put a plan together very quickly with that included the federally qualified health centers to develop a location where we were able to at least place people who were struggling with the illness. So that was really, for months, that was the focus. The Jericho project was way on the back burner. And then it came to life again when I had heard from CHI that the developer was nearing closing on the property, because I didn't know at that point whether the developer even had the property anymore or was going to buy it. We were really not in touch for months and months. Yes, yeah. So Chai let us know that the developer was going to purchase the property and that he was near a closing date. And I believe that closing then eventually happened the beginning of July, somewhere around the 8th or 9th. The 12th was the final. So it was at the beginning of July. And then I had another conversation at that time with the school superintendent who checked in and said, "Hey, Nancy, what's going on?" And I said, "Yeah, I think this project is, I heard the developer closed on the building." And he said, "Well, do you anticipate any additional children coming into the district?" So what we did is Lorraine and her staff, they surveyed all of the families. It was about 104 families that potentially were in motels that could have been placed if the Jericho project came to be. They could have been placed there, and we tried to get a sense of who would be transferring their children, if anything, to Jericho. And what we found is that, not surprisingly, the majority of parents chose to keep their children in the district of origin because that's at least consistency for kids that are homeless. And a total of 19 children. There were about, was it 6 families, I think, or 7 families, or a handful of families who said, oh yes, if we get moved, then we would move our kids and put our kids in Jericho. Now, I'm sure you all know, or maybe you don't, about the McKinney-Vento Act. It's a federal legislation that allows for homeless parents to decide where they want to put their children. Children have the right to go back to their school district of origin, and that district has to bus them if need be. Parents also have a right to put their children in the new school district of wherever they're placed. So out of these 104 families, there was a small handful of families who said, yes, we would put our children in Jericho. And so we had a total of 19 children that potentially would be going to the Jericho School District. And I shared that information with the superintendent. We were able to give him the grades of all 19 children, and that's where we left it. So the other thing you should note, any of the children who potentially would go into the Jericho School District does not pay for those children. Under the McKinney-Vento Act, the school district of origin must reimburse the Jericho School District. And it says right here, I'm quoting from it, anytime a student is temporarily placed into a new district, the quote, home district or quote, district of origin remains financially responsible for the student's education and transportation to school. The stacked form, which gets completed, is sent to the state ed department, which requests that the home district reimburse the district that the child is placed in for any cost. So it would be at no cost. You should also know that once the family were to move out of the school district, so if we had put them in the Hampton Inn and they moved out now to permanent housing and say they relocated to another area in Nassau County, unless that child is a senior in high school, those children have to go to the school district that they've relocated to. They cannot remain in Jericho and live somewhere else. And that is also part of the federal legislation. So the only exception to that is if you have a child that's graduating. So if a child is in 11th grade and they have one more year to go, the state says that child can finish their schooling, say in the Jericho, school district. But any other children, they have to go to the new home district. So Hank was aware of that. He knows the federal legislation just like I do. And so that's what we discussed in July about these 19 children and what their grades would be, because we knew specifically the grades.
Was in the beginning of July?
It was probably mid-July. It was after I found out that the developer bought the building and had actually closed on the building because, as I mentioned before, we really were not focused on the project for months because we were really focused on providing emergency services to the county and to make sure we had an isolation site for homeless folks that were sick or exposed.
And what about the town of Oyster Bay?
What about them?
Do you notify the town? Like, is there
No.
any permits you have to follow, any codes that or are you just allowed to do whatever?
No, we did not. But Chairman Walker, it is no different than all of these shelters that we have, the 44 shelters that we have in all of the other communities. We did not do anything different with respect to this project than we did with all of these folks. And with all of these projects that I don't know if you guys have received this list, but if you peruse the list, we're talking Roosevelt, Hempstead, Uniondale, Freeport. Those folks were never reached out to. We did nothing any different here with Jericho, with the town of Oyster Bay. The other thing is, and if I could just add on, we are also bound by confidentiality law. Could you just go over that for a minute, Rudy?
Very briefly, the records at DSS are New York State records. They are the proprietary interest of the state of New York. We act as their instrumentality in this state. Those records are governed by confidentiality, specifically Social Services Law Section 136, which prohibits any communication or disclosure of this information other than specified cases. So it's if you were to call us and say, is a person a recipient? Is a person located, and we are not able to tell you that unless it falls within a specific, a criminal act that's, being investigated, things of that nature. So it's a very strict mandate that we're under in terms of what governs the kind of information that we can release or that we can provide. And that you need to be aware of that, and it's an unfortunate mandate. I understand your concern, but we're governed by the state regarding that issue.
I'm really concerned more for the safety of those families now that are going to be living there. Is everything up to code in that? I mean, it wasn't a homeless shelter before. Yeah. It wasn't housing families that are going to be staying for a longer period of time. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Is it going to be kitchen facilities for them? If it's kind of a lot of wraparound services, daycare. I mean, they didn't have daycare in a hotel before, in the Hampton Inn before. You want to make sure that wherever we're housing these families, they have enough troubles that they have to deal with. You want to make sure where they are that everything is right for them, that we're not putting them in some place that is detrimental to them because they don't have the proper, things that they're supposed to have, which I wouldn't even know all those things.
Sure.
Normally you would do that, like I said, even in a home or whatever, that you make sure that everything is up to code, that they have all the right things. The fire marshals have been notified. Is this right? I mean, I'm going to tell you an example, something that they had reached out to me. The chief of the Jericho Fire Department had gone over because he was very concerned, saw some work or whatever, and they were very reluctant to even let him look around or whatever. And which finally, I guess somebody said, well, I'll take you a little bit, walk through, whatever, which he did. And a few days later, or a week later, or whenever it was, they actually had a fire call, because the automatic alarms went off. So he went over there, and they didn't want to even let him in. And they said, look, now it's our worry. We're the fire department. We have to make sure it's safe where you are. And so he was able to see more. It said there was an indoor pool there that was emptied, obviously, but it was just filled with junk that they just threw in there. Now, I would certainly assume it's not going to be left like that. But those are all the things, like I said, wherever we're putting families, I mean, God bless them. I hate to see that they're in a motel room anywhere. But, if a facility is going to be done and going to be so much better for them, we have to make sure that facility is what it should be, and that it's safe for them, and it's not their permanent home yet, but it's as much of a permanent home that we can make for them with all those wraparound services, and make sure everything is done properly. Who's checking on that?
Okay.
Who is?
Yep.
I mean, the state is okay this building, but obviously the building's not even ready yet, so the state doesn't know and the state, what might be fine in some part of the state isn't fine here,
Yep. So all of your concerns are correct. I mean, we want to always make sure. But the thing about it is we're not the people. The department doesn't get involved in zoning and codes. That's the state jobs. The state's job. They're the ones, for any facility in New York State, they have to inspect the building. They have to decide whether it meets whatever building codes, zoning codes. That's not us. And in fact, we just received a notification from the state. They apparently did go down and they looked at the building. They did a walkthrough, and we received a letter dated yesterday that they are ready to pre-certify that facility. So I guess, and I can't speak for them, but I am going to assume that based on this letter that we received, when they conducted their walkthrough, they felt that facility, physical plant, met whatever regulations they have for shelters. And that's found in the Part 900 regulations. Yes.
Can you hear me? Hi. So I just want you to know a little bit more about the process. We have to send up security plans, operational plans, budgets, And we are the pass-through. So I see, and Doug and I see these all going up and down and up and down. They go back and forth over and over with Otada. There are things that I want to see. My goal in any shelter is people are well fed, they have access to nutritional food that for dietary, if you're diabetic, those are things, safety, I'm very clear on, and permanent housing opportunities. But the regs for these shelters, they go on for pages, and Otada will send a letter back. There'll be like 55 points that they're unhappy with, and this is what it takes to come to certification. They're very stringent on these regulations.
And this process is going to now happen for all 44 shelters that we have in Nassau County, because by 2023, every single shelter needs to be certified by OTDA. So this very rigorous process is going to be happening over the next couple of years, and we know some of our current providers are going to do well, and some of them are not. They may not be able to meet the rigorous standards.
One more thing?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just one more thing on the building. This building operated as a hotel, so it's a fantastic site for the families to be at. So it was already so many steps ahead because of the use of the building before it was considered for this purpose, as opposed to some of the residential type shelters that we have where people are quite crowded. There's recreation for the children. There's so many, there's an after-school program, there will be tutoring for the children, so, and there's space in there for all of these services to be administered comfortably for the families.
Doug Russell again. I would just like to add to your comment about the pool, is that the plan is to fill that pool in, and that's going to become a daycare center.
Not fill it in with water. You mean end the pool?
No.
Let's hope not. No.
That's not going to be a big sandbox.
I do have other questions, but I'm going to let the rest of our committee ask their questions. Anyone want to go? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of preliminary questions. So if all of the homeless shelters in Nassau County are going to be required to be licensed and approved by the state OTDA in 2023, why did CHI have to go through the process now?
Because that's the process that's currently in play. So for any new facility starting January of this year through January of 2023, this is the process.
That's a county stipulation.
No, it's a state. No,
So-
it's
so
not
even
our,
though-
it's not our rules. It's the state's rules. This is state mandate. It's not ours.
But it doesn't go into effect until 2023, I thought you said.
No, by 2023, everyone has to be up to the standard.
Oh, I
It's
got
in
you.
effect
Okay.
currently.
Thank you. I was a little bit confused. Okay, so obviously we know that the county doesn't select the site here, and when it comes to providing homeless shelters or shelters for homeless families, the county is always approached by the provider. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the county never goes out and seeks a location.
No, we do not.
Okay. And when you do enter into these relationships with the providers, is there always an MOU in place?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And in this particular case, because you've been involved with CHI in the two other locations in Hempstead and Uniondale that was set forth in the MOU from 2017, according to that MOU, to allow for the facility in Jericho only needed a letter of consent, which is more or less an amendment to the MOU. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And have you had any issues or problems with CHI over the past 3 years at the Uniondale and Hempstead locations?
Well, they've been with the county for 12 years.
I'm sorry?
They've been with the county for 12 years. They've been operating shelters. To my knowledge, in my time that I've been here, absolutely nothing has been brought to my attention. Doug has been here the longest.
I'm sorry. In the time that I've been at DSS, CHI has always been considered to be one of our premier providers, operators of homeless shelters. This doesn't mean that sometimes bad things don't happen in shelters, and they may have happened at this shelter. The state requires a serious incident report. I can't tell you off the top of my head whether or not there's been any at CHI's facilities, but if there had been, they would report that. But generally, we look at them as being one of the best providers that we have.
Approximately how many shelters have they provided in Nassau County over the past?
Well, they have three family shelters right now. One of them we're converting over to a singles shelter.
The other thing, just to add to that, legislator, is they operate 39 locations in Suffolk County, and they also did a similar conversion, like I had mentioned earlier, in Comac. And I've certainly been in touch with the commissioner, my partner in Suffolk County, and they're held in very high regard there as well.
The facility in Jericho, it is not requiring any construction, correct?
To our knowledge, no, but again, that would be the developer's decision with CHI.
Right, okay. And the cost that you indicated, Commissioner, the average of $225 a night, which is set by the state of New York, correct?
Yes, CHI put together a budget laying out their personnel costs and other costs, and then the state finally approved that as the daily rate.
And that comes out to that approximately $40,000 for a 6-month stay.
For a family of 4.
$60,000 for a 9-month stay versus the $104,000 for approximately a 2-year stay that the county incurs now at the motels where they're getting no services.
That's correct.
Okay. And that $40,000 or $60,000 that is paid by the county is 100% reimbursed by the state of New York.
For the most part, it's 100% reimbursable. If there are TANF families that have hit their 5-year mark, then we share some of that cost. We share a percentage of that cost. But for the most part, it is reimbursable.
And any amount that is spent by DSS, whether you're reimbursed or not, in any services that you provide, that number is already factored into your annual budget, correct?
That's correct.
So it's allocated already in advance, and every year you have to you submit your budget for that year.
That's correct.
Okay. I had a question for the county attorney, Mr. Carminati. You spoke about confidentiality, how the county was required to maintain confidentiality.
I'm sorry, sir. The department must maintain confidentiality.
Sorry?
It's not to the county. It's the department must maintain confidentiality because it is an instrument of the state dealing with state records and mandates.
Okay, but yet the commissioner advised the school superintendent about this project. Is that not a breach of the confidentiality?
Well, I'm not here to judge that aspect.
It's not a matter of judgment,
If
sir.
I may, sir, it's not a matter of my judging it. What I'm trying to say is it was my understanding of it. It was an offhand comment made initially, I believe, in January, that for a project that at that time was dormant. It did not exist. Subsequent to that, there was a subsequent meeting where, out of a concern for the children, for the clients, the matter was addressed. No names were revealed that I'm aware of. No identifying information was provided. Merely statistical information was garnered to assist the superintendent regarding an impact that may or may not occur in that school district.
Sir, I have no problem, I have no issue with the commissioner making those comments. I only raise it because you made a point of talking about confidentiality.
So the question.
So if the confidentiality doesn't apply to that situation,
So again, I'm not here to adjudicate that particular point. What I am trying to say is how this happened. I wasn't there. Had I been there, I would have advised the commissioner differently.
okay.
But I cannot now second guess the commissioner or say it didn't happen or it shouldn't have happened. I'm not here to chastise anyone. What I am here to say
only
is,
asked you if there was a violation of the...
and I'm not here in a position to adjudicate that. What I can say in all fairness and to answer your question directly and honestly is that had I been present, I would have advised the commissioner not to have made that comment, but that's hindsight, second guessing, and I'm not going to engage in that.
So, the county, and in all of the previous shelters, you talked about the 44 shelters that are being operated throughout the county. There's never really any advance consultation with the community, is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you know if the provider, on their own initiative, ever communicates with the community, the local community, before it does?
Yeah, we wouldn't know that.
Okay. So really, the county, in this particular case, plays absolutely zero role in the licensing of this facility. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the state is responsible for the approval of the location in all respects, whether it's safety, whether it's proper for the services that are going to be provided. They inspect the location, they approve it, and then the county gets involved after that fact. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I have nothing more at this time, but I may have some more afterwards. Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you for your staff as well.
Thank you very much.
Could I just ask you just to explain to me, because I lost you there for a little bit. I mean, I understand the confidentiality, just like HIPAA. I mean, you wouldn't say that, Rose Walker was now living in that hotel. I get that.
Correct.
What did you say you would have advised the commissioner
I
to
said I
not?
would not have advised that particular. I'm sorry. I said I would not have advised her if I had been there, but I wasn't there.
Can't really even understand what you
I'm
said.
sorry. I would have, had I been present, I would have advised the commissioner not to have made any reference to it, but she made the reference. It was an innocuous act. It wasn't meant in any detrimental way. Once it was done, it was done.
Would have advised, if you were there, you would have advised the commissioner not to let the school district know?
I would have advised the commissioner that we should discuss the matter first to see what can be revealed or not. I would not have done it in the offhand manner, but that's not really the issue. The issue is that the commission was made. It was done as far as I'm concerned, subsequently in a way that revealed no client information.
Right.
And that's the key thing. We're not trying to reveal any client information, nor are we trying to give any identifying material that would, as you say, identify that, say, Rose Walker or anyone else was there.
Right.
And that was not done.
No. I mean, I personally don't think there was any breach of confidentiality.
No.
I can't even fathom that you would not let a school district know if they have 19 more students coming into their school district, especially when you just went through COVID and God knows they're trying to figure out where to put their children anywhere.
Yeah.
So-
What we can't do is I can't say to you, oh, by the way, 90 Main Street is going to be a homeless shelter, because that immediately lets you know that there's a good majority of people there who are on public assistance, right? But all of our children that are in our shelters now, the providers must make sure they're registered for school. That gets done through the stack form. So, the kids have to go to school. So that process is a regular process that happens wherever the children are living, whether they're living in one of our shelters or they're living in a motel unit. It has to happen because kids have to go to school.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Legislator Schaefer?
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Commissioner.
Sure.
And everyone else. Okay. On the top, I'm going to jump around a little bit. Just want some clarification on a couple things. On the topic of the school children, did you say, can you just explain that to me again? Did you say that if they move, so this is a transitional shelter for approximately 6 to 9 months, they're supposed to be there. So if you move them out, which is the goal, right, after, let's say, 8 months, and they go outside of the district, the children have to, unless they're in graduating position or ready to graduate, they have to go to the new school district?
Well, they're allowed to finish out that school year. So say they started now in September and they move out in January, right? They can finish the school year wherever they are.
Right.
But then the next September, they must go to the school district that they live in.
Okay, so none of these children that are coming in, so there's going to be a lot of transition then?
Yeah, there'll be transition, and that's why the communication with the school will be important. Sure.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and then we were talking about cost to the county. Can you explain to me again when there is a cost to the county? I know this is mostly an appropriation, funds from the state, but you said something after a certain period of time?
Yeah, it's for, I'm going to have Lorraine
Okay.
cover this, since this is, you've got a mic, since this is one of her areas of expertise, and she's done the research.
Thank you.
Hi, so TANF is Temporary Assistance to Needy Families, and that's a federal benefit. In New York State, we're a very benefit-rich and generous state as a whole. So we go to the maximum of 5 years on TANF. There are other states that cap it at 3 years. There are other states that once a family has gone to their maximum of TANF, there is zero benefits for that family. In New York State, we don't do that. In New York State, if you have maxed out of your TANF, then we move you to safety net. Now, it's in our Constitution, Doug is telling me, and that depends. I want to also, there's another element that comes in here, which is OTDA requires, it's called the shelter share. So if a family's working, they are assessed for what they can contribute back to us, so I don't want you to think that that doesn't happen. This is also our responsibility at Department of Social Services. So we have a lot of money coming in from the people who need to access and are qualified to access emergency shelter. We have some families with the TANF. We have some families where we're paying 71%. That's our deal that we made with the state, that's our amount in Nassau County. So it's a very complex financial picture for the homelessness. Does that help?
Sounds like a complex picture. Yeah, it helps though.
Okay.
Okay. I have a question about, all right, some timing here. So, and you may have explained this earlier, so I apologize if I missed it, but so DSS entered into an agreement with CHI in June to operate the shelter?
No.
No.
There was an existing MOU with CHI dating back to
That one I see, yeah, I've seen
to
that.
May of 17.
So it was just the amendment to that, is that what you're saying?
Right, but
Okay.
that wasn't issued in June. But yes, the process would have been to make an amendment to that to add a new location.
Okay. Was there an agreement or an amendment made prior to the real estate transaction being finalized?
No.
There
No, we
wasn't.
had no idea if they were buying to build it. We didn't know.
Okay. Okay, as far as CHI and their track record, and I guess any shelters in general, who keeps track of, so this one specifically is for 6 to 9 months. That's the projected, and that's, when you want to move people, on and hopefully out into their, own lives outside of a homeless situation. So is there some sort of, record keeping or success rate that's maintained, or how do we know that these are going to be successful situations where they're moving out, and what happens if they're not?
Well, Lorraine will walk you through the whole OTDA process, because they're the ones that, their division of compliance oversees all of that.
So I'm going to let you know that I'm very data-driven. So I have an excellent team in emergency housing, and we are going after all of these statistics from every different angle. So as we keep progressing on this, we're going to know exactly which of our providers can match up to the 6 months at CHI. I actually have that from one of our largest providers that has been there in Nassau County. I was very happy to see that they meet that, and we will require it and track it for everyone. So we are able to see that information, but now we're really dissecting it. We're going into families, single men, single women, people with substance abuse. We're going to, so that we can meet the needs. Also, with our smaller shelters, there have been people that have been dedicated to doing this work, and now they're up against these very stringent requirements from OTDA, and it makes them very nervous. We don't want them to stop doing this important work they've been doing a lifetime for Nassau County. So what we're hoping is to make those specialty shelters where you might take a certain population that they can just specialize with and make that population provide those specific needs so they can move faster. There's certain things that make different areas move faster. Families move faster this way. People with substance abuse or people with mental health need to get into specialized housing. You have to be able to do the spot. It's very complex. This will allow us to specialize and hopefully save money and make lives, improve lives in a much faster manner.
Okay.
But in terms of the Jericho project, what will happen for all state-certified shelters is the state does annual inspections. They come down, and they will do, this is a several-day process, I know because I've been through it in my previous job. They will come down, they will go through the building, they will look in every nook and cranny, make sure that the building meets all physical plant requirements, physical plant environmental requirements, and then they will do a program evaluation. So they will read case records, they will interview staff, they will interview clients. They do a complete, they usually come down, it could be anywhere from 3 to 5 days where they will spend, the folks from Albany come down, and they do a complete comprehensive look to make sure that the provider is meeting all the requirements. And then, of course, we would get a notice. Once they did that, they would give us a copy of the results. The provider would then have, if there were any corrections, they would have 30 days to submit a corrective action plan to the state to say how it is that they were going to correct whatever citations they received. So again, we would be notified of all of this, but it would be the state that really monitors the facilities, and that's what's going to happen going forward with all the providers in Nassau County.
Okay, and how often did you say they would be doing that?
Once a year, although I've seen if there was a provider that was having difficulty, they've done it more than once a year. And it's also a surprise inspection. It's not scheduled, so they just show up.
Okay.
It could be any day, any time. They just say, we're here.
Okay. And did you say that because this comes through the state, or is there some regulation that eliminates or circumvents the requirement to abide by zoning or anything like that, like local ordinances?
Yes, because our understanding, and again, this is not, it's not our rule or our law, but under the state regulations, they're the ones that approve any facility for use as a shelter. So, and it is our understanding, and again, we don't get involved in this, is that their word supersedes, that there's a preemption. So the state preempts any local a local zoning. But again, that's not us. That's really the state's call.
Right.
So,
Okay. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
thank you.
Legislator DeRigi Witten?
Hi. I understand and I appreciate all the work that you do, especially during COVID. It's been, I'm sure, an incredible task. But I also understand that whenever there's a change in the community, there's anxiety, and I get that. And I know you mentioned that basically you look to search as to what the needs are for these clients that are staying in your residencies. You mentioned that there could be addiction issues or other challenges. Can you go over what type of background checks you do before people are brought into this type of situation, or is it that we just basically take everybody?
So when I was discussing that before, I would say that is not the challenges for our families. You know, our families, it's usually financial, and so we're employment, and we want to make sure the children are safe while mom and dad or mom or dad are getting their skill set, employment. That's really the challenges there. There are other populations that have different challenges. That's not found as much in the families, but there is screening that's done up front at DSS for anyone who applies for temporary assistance, whether you're homeless or not. It's in the packet that everyone fills out. So if someone has identified special need, domestic violence, we have a whole system for, like if someone's involved in domestic violence, we're not going to place that family in our regular shelter system because it will put the other families at risk. So we have an MOU and an entire system for DV shelter. If someone comes in and they identify that they have substance use, we have a behavioral health unit, and we immediately connect them with services. So we are always assessing up front in order to meet the needs of whoever comes into the building and accesses emergency housing.
But it should also be noted that per state mandate, we can't deny shelter to someone because they have a special problem. As long as they're eligible for the service, then our job is to make sure they get where they need to be.
I understand that. I'm just, how about a criminal background? Is that at all identified, or?
That does not prohibit somebody from obtaining shelter if they are found eligible. And we can't discriminate against people.
Okay. What about the new world of COVID? Are they going to be having any type of testing that would be required, or is it basically just like any other residence?
I believe, again, this probably is a better question for CHI if we're speaking specifically about this this facility, but I believe they were taking temperatures of folks, and actually their facility, and the closest comparison is the one in Comac, has a very, very low, had very few number of cases. So they've, from what we know, they've done a good job. But probably we could, if you want, we could find out from them what are their procedures.
I would absolutely suggest that we find out. And I also would, possibly just work with the Department of Health just to require it as much as possible. I understand everyone has the same rights. I'm not trying to.
Yeah.
But I think living in that proximity is a red flag. And I think, we have to be extra careful. And so whatever we can do, either before they enter the establishment or on a regular basis, I think it would be a good precaution.
Okay, we could certainly speak to them about that.
We're going to open it to the public in a moment, but so in this facility, there's 80 rooms, you said?
Yes,
And all 80 of those will be utilized?
correct.
Now, if, say, there's a larger family, do they
Yeah,
try to are they?
Yeah, there are a couple of adjoining rooms, because again, it was a hotel.
Right.
So there are a couple of adjoining rooms that could accommodate some of the larger families, which for us is actually very good, because the larger families now, if we have to pay for 2 motel rooms, it could be, usually those are some of the more expensive motels, so we could be paying up to $300 for 2 rooms, so that's $600 a night to put a large family in 2 motel rooms. It gets very costly.
And I know you said
Oh,
that there really wasn't construction, but I would guess there would have to be some construction inside the facility if they're making, like, the pool is now going to be the playroom area or the child daycare area or whatever. If they're going to put in a kitchen, it didn't have a kitchen before.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not building out and up and whatever.
Right.
It's only inside construction, but obviously they're going to have to do something.
Yeah, I would, and again, that wouldn't be our call, right? So we weren't privy to whatever it is they're doing inside the building. That would really be between the developer and CHI, and the state, because the state would know if there were any renovations that might have been needed to meet those mandates. So I'm sure that information could be obtained. We just wouldn't have it.
Do you, I know it doesn't fall under us, and it really is more the state, but do you visit our shelters? I mean, because they're our families. I mean, they're ours. They're not the state's. They're ours. They're county residents. You know, they're our community residents. And like I said, my big concern is their safety too. I mean, we have to make sure that they're in a safe environment.
Yep. I will let these folks answer it, since this
Okay,
is...
so to let you know, I'm going to pass this to Doug for the inspections. We have our own inspectors in Nassau County, so I'll let Doug speak to that. But I want you to know that we're in constant communication with all our shelters. So I have emails throughout the entire day, sometimes 40, 50, for any little thing that happens in the shelter, I'm copied on it. And they're always talking to our emergency housing unit. We have psychiatric social workers, we have case managers, and it's a constant communication and support for the shelters in that way. And then I'll let Doug talk about the inspectors.
Thank you. Yeah, just to add on to that, the way that the communication happens is that we have automated the system we call the Shelter Placement Online Tracking System, or we call it SPOT. And the shelter providers use that to communicate with our placement people and vice versa. As far as state requirements are concerned, we are required by state law to inspect the shelter at least once a year. And we also frequently inspect them more often. If a client comes in with a complaint, let's say, oh, this place has bed bugs, or this place is dirty, or they didn't treat me right in this place, we'll have them fill out a complaint form, and then we'll immediately send out an inspector to go investigate what's going on with that. So we spent a lot of time at the shelters looking at them, making sure that they're physically safe, and making sure that they're complying with the state law and state mandates and regulations.
Okay, we're going to, hopefully we can get to every one of our residents that would like to speak. And we are limiting it to the 3 minutes, so, our clerk will let you know, could you wrap it up? And okay, what did you want? Oh, Legislator Schaefer first.
Just a quick question. Are there any other shelters in the county as large as this one will be? No, because I'll let you answer.
No, actually, this will be our biggest one, and what's wonderful about that is we'll be able to get rid of some of these motels. So,
Okay.
Yep.
And when did you first find out about this happening again?
The idea was brought to me at the end of, I think, last year. I had just come to my position. I think it was November or December. I can't recall.
And who was it brought to you by?
By CHI, by Community Housing
CHI.
Innovations.
Okay,
Yes.
not the administration?
No.
Okay.
No.
Have there been any conversations or meetings with the county executive on it, or, her stance on it, or anything like that? With
No.
The department?
No, not with me. No.
Okay, okay, all right.
All right.
To your knowledge, she approves of this, the county executive, or she doesn't?
I really can't comment because I haven't discussed it with her.
Okay,
So,
I think maybe Katie is coming.
Katie Horse from the administration. Yes, the county executive does support this.
Okay, thank you.
all right, thanks.
Okay, and one other thing I am going to ask, there are some people outside that would also like to speak. So if you speak and, you know, even if you stepped out into the outer room just behind us, or right behind you, so to allow someone else to come in, if you don't mind. All right, so the first speaker is Dr. Eve Kriat. Kriat? I apologize too if I don't say anyone's name properly.
Yeah, Dr. Eve Krief. My name is Dr. Eve Krief, and I'm a pediatrician, and I'm legislative chair of New York Chapter 2, American Academy of Pediatrics. I'm speaking here today in support of the Jericho Family Support Center. For a child, a home is not just a roof over their heads, but a place of security and stability where they can safely develop and grow. For pediatricians like me, the rise of homelessness among children in our country raises deep concerns and obligates us to advocate for homeless children whenever we can. And this is one of those moments. 2.5 American children, half of them younger than 6 years old, experience homelessness every year. Children are homeless in every state, every city, and every county in the United States. They are hidden from sight in shelters, abandoned buildings, crowded in with family members and friends, living in cars. Children without a stable home are at risk for many adverse outcomes, including hunger, abuse, and a lack of access to medical care. Being homeless severely compromises a child's ability to become a contributing member of society. Inadequate shelter, insecurity, and barriers to available services all exacerbate the hunger, poor nutrition, medical problems, and educational failings that plague homeless children. Compared with children living in stable homes, homeless children are more than twice as likely to have health problems and 3 times more likely to experience serious medical problems. They're more likely to miss meals and more likely to be worried about when their next meal will be. With frequent moves that interfere with stable schooling and that educational achievement can be affected. The low self-esteem and lack of constancy that comes with the frequent moves contribute to a decreased likelihood making lasting friendships and social adjustment. A society is measured by how it cares for its most vulnerable members, its children. 100,000 or more children are homeless on any given night, and 2.5 million children experience homelessness over the course of a year. The ongoing pandemic will only worsen the situation. It already has, as more families find themselves unable to pull themselves out of poverty and without a home. We are the wealthiest country in the world. Surely we can do better for our children as a society. It is incumbent upon all of us in every state, every county, and every town to help these children and families. We must not look at these children and families as someone else's problem, another town's problem. Let's give these children the safety and stability that this Family Support Center will provide. Let's do our share to lift up these children and help provide them with a healthier and brighter future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kriat. Lisa Tyson.
My name is Aviante Percy. I'm here to speak for Lisa. I'm from Amityville, New York. I started protesting out on Southwoods Road and Jericho Turnpike. I just want to say that that's the only way for me to feel comfortable in my heart, because just to be, you know, like, as a kid, my mother, I was a young kid, and like she had to do whatever she had to do to make money for us, you know, like it was hard. And my mother was shot and killed right in front of me. And I said to myself, I could have easily been a bad person and say, you know what, let me go be like, rob this person, do this to that person because my life's so terrible. No, I chose to stick it out. I am homeless. I sleep in my girlfriend's car. She's an amazing woman for even allowing me to sleep there in her car. If I didn't have her, I wouldn't have anything. I have a daughter who's 2 years old, and like I can't see her because me and the mother have differences. And it hurts me every day just knowing I'm in the car and I gotta fall asleep knowing that I can't lay with my little girl at night. There's more than enough tax money being thrown around, and I'm pretty sure of it. I'm here to get the nitty-gritty. I'm not here to play around. Like, I know what needs to be done for my people. The only way to come about it is positivity, because no one's going to listen to negativity. There's a lot of people just like me. Imagine a mother that's single with like 5 kids. You know what I'm saying? I'm able to shower every day, but when it's wintertime, it gets cold. And my relationship can hinder on just me not being stable and living in the car with my girlfriend. Like, she could just say, I'm out of here. You know what I'm saying? And just leave me, you know, and that's it. That's it for me. But I'm going to continue to persevere. I'm going to continue to push for this movement because I believe this is a very good idea. I just want, like, justice for my people. You know, I got to sit out and protest to feel good within myself because I'm not comfortable when I walk into a store. I'm subjected. Oh, this guy's going to steal. This guy's going to take something. I've had enough. You know, my little girl's going to grow up, and I don't want her trying to go for a job and being denied because of the color of her skin or being bullied at school because of what she looks like. You know, it's just not right. I just hope that we can all get this right and, like, really come together because I'm willing to take every positive step forward. Thank you.
Could you just fill out a form too, hon, just so we have your name? I know you spoke in Lisa's place. You got it? Okay. All right, thanks, hon. John Saraf.
Good morning. I just wanted to state some facts. I know this whole shelter thing has polarized a lot of people on both sides. This is not about not helping homeless people. Everybody wants to help homeless people. There's a lot of facts that has been missed. The MOU that was signed by DDS in June 4th, the building was not purchased till July 20th. Was that deal exclusive to this developer, or everybody else had a right to bid on that? I mean, there's a lot of money that's being spent. This is about $82,000 per family in one of the worst economic depressions that legislator Drucker was saying. We're spending $82,000 a family to take care of homeless people, where many people are working, struggling to make ends meet. And while the developer is making $3.5 million a year. Is this something that's good? And it was trying to be very secretive, very quiet. And to bring another point, our superintendent was told in January, keep this a secret. We have it on email, the proof is there. It wasn't that the project was on hold and in July they told them that it's a go. So why all the secrecy around the project? Why, if New York State is supposed to mandate, and also in the MOU there is actually a clause that it says they have to abide by the local zoning laws in the MOU that the DSS has signed, which says she. So for us, you know, it's more than just not helping homeless. It's the whole situation just doesn't smell right. It's a waste of taxpayer money. People are paying a lot of money in taxes, people who work hard. And the other thing that I want to bring up is they claim to have 1,300 homeless people in Nassau. They want to put about 320 of them in Jericho, a small district, which is not even 1% of the population of Nassau County. Is that fair? Is that a fair burden? So any developer can come with Chi and decide where they want to open up homeless shelter because they're going to make a lot of money? I mean, I thought this is America and like a county would be able to take care of, you know, have site selection, have studies done, environmental, traffic. None of this has been done. This was just a project, like a smoke screen coming in, get it done, until somebody found out, and now we're having all of these issues. So I think, you guys as legislators should ask more hard questions of how this deal went through. I mean, we didn't hear any good questions today. I mean, the MOU specifically says they have to abide by the local zoning laws, all the laws. Now they're saying it's the state that has to do, So I'm confused about a lot of this. But again, this is not about compassion. We're very compassionate people. We want to take care of our homeless. Everybody does. So the issue is very different than what they portray it to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner, could you just address that regarding the timing? And also, I know you had stated to us that everything it's really the state that handles it, but that they still have to abide by local zoning laws.
Well, if you want to take another comment, and I will take a look at the MOU because I have it in front of me.
Oh, sure, you want us to take another comment?
Yeah,
Okay.
while I take
Sure.
a look at it. Okay, thanks.
Jennifer Vartanov, and I'm just going to remind everyone when you speak, just leave your mask on.
Thank you, everyone. Just want to say, I believe the state relies on Department of Social Services, not the other way around. I'm not sure why Commissioner Nunziata is dodging all questions asked of her today, saying it's the state, it's not us. No, it's not that way. It's the other way around. She should be answering all of these questions. I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. We know the last few weeks have been very tumultuous for most of us after learning that a shelter was being put in an old motel. An old motel. This is not a place for families. This is not a place for a mother to raise a child. This is not a place for a child to thrive and play and learn. If children are the most important, why put them in transient housing where they have to keep moving school districts and not providing them any stability? How could Laura Coran allow something like this on her watch? All the millions being spent on this would be better off if we help the families gain permanent housing. I urge the legislators here today to hold another hearing with the state present, since Commissioner Nunziata keeps saying that it's the state and it's not them. And regarding the background checks, there was a question asked, and Commissioner Nunziata did say that no one will be turned away, even if they're a criminal, even if they're a pedophile, even if they're a sex offender. Well, that's not good enough. This location is half a mile away from an elementary school. How do the parents feel about having a sex offender, possibly a criminal, just half a mile away? And just touching upon what John Seraph also said, MOU clearly states local zoning laws need to be followed. There is no state preemption that just says you can go open up a shelter anywhere without any following any local ordinances. Tomorrow they might want to open up a jail right next to the elementary school. Is that okay? There is no state preemption that says that they can just, it's a blanket coverage for everything. There were no health and safety inspections done, by the way, when that MOU addendum was signed on June 4th. So how did they vet this location? That's a great question that I still don't have the answer to. And regarding the costs, I just want to say, she said $100,000 being spent for 2 years, $60,000 for 6 months now. What are we saving? It's the same thing. $100,000 for 2 years in a motel versus $60,000 that they're going to be spending now for 6 months. How does that make financial sense? What are we saving? Let's see what else I have. I have 4 seconds. I guess I'm done. I want someone to ask regarding the motels. Are they phasing them out? We want something in writing. We don't want the shelter plus the motels. We still don't have those answers. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jennifer. Commissioner, are you ready, or you want us to do another?
Do another.
I can have someone else come up if you'd like. Mark Albert?
Legislator Walker, before I begin my comments, I would love to ask the Commissioner a question if I can. I think that the idea behind this hearing was for all of us to be informed, and there are a few things that she's indicated here today that leave me baffled, and I just would like to ask a quick question of her if I can.
Well, if you address it to us, then we can.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. So I believe Legislator Schaefer asked a very good question earlier about the MOU and when it was amended, and she asked whether or not it was amended in June before this purchase went through in July. The Commissioner said that it was not amended in June, and so my question to her would be, when was it amended? In other words, when did this developer learn that he was going to be given this project, which was going to provide him with millions of dollars of profit each year? And is it her position that the developer went through on a $13.5 million purchase of this hotel without having any idea that he was going to be given this project? I would guarantee the answer to that is no. Let me start with this. I'm a parent of a Jericho student. I've lived in the community for 15 years. I've had other kids of mine come through the system. I'm one of close to 3,000 members of the community that signed a petition in staunch opposition to this project. Legislator Walker, you started this hearing by saying that this project and the way that it kind of came to be made little sense, and it actually was the exact terminology that I was going to use. If this project made any sense at all, I can guarantee you that I would not be here today and there would not be almost 3,000 names on a petition in opposition to it. It makes no sense from a safety point of view. It makes no sense from a due diligence point of view. It makes no sense from a fiscal point of view. And with respect to safety, how the Commissioner can sit here now in September and say that she still doesn't know how the safety impact with respect to COVID is going to be on the community is baffling. That she's trying to point the finger at CHI and say CHI could answer questions about what protocols or safety measures they're taking with respect to COVID is beyond comprehension. And when you add into this process the fact that they went through with this proposal, they went through with this deal, it was signed off on, and construction began without the chair of the Health and Safety Committee, Legislator Walker, even knowing what was happening, being part of the process to be able to make recommendations or be able to look at exactly what safety protocols they were taking is simply put wrong. And that we're sitting here in September after students would have been moved into our schools had the town of Oyster Bay not sued the developer in court and obtained a temporary restraining order, and she's still saying that she doesn't know what safety protocols are being taken, and she's telling us to ask CHI about those protocols, really leaves a lot to be desired. It's not CHI, it's our county. It's our county executive. It is our commissioner here who should be looking out for the safety of our kids, of our residents, and I would just ask the legislator the legislation here to look carefully into this before approving it. Thank you.
Just so you are aware, this doesn't even come before the legislature to approve. So I just want you to be aware of that. I don't want you to think that all of a sudden we didn't let you know that. So, are you ready, Commissioner?
Yes, I looked through now. Of course, I looked through quickly. I didn't really see anything about zoning, but I will take a closer look, and if I can get back to you, I will do so in writing. Like I said, I did a quick review. I didn't see that. Also want to address the criminality question that came up. Absolutely no sexual pedophiles, offenders are going to be placed at Jericho. They cannot be placed there by law, because that it would be a family shelter. There are children. So we absolutely would never, could never put a sex offender at that location.
And one of the other things, I don't know that I'll remember all of it if anybody else does up here, but regarding, and I know you did touch base on this, but how was the MOU signed when the building wasn't even sold yet? I mean, how did that vendor know he was going to? So,
Yeah, the original MOU was in 2017.
right,
Correct.
we understand the original MOU was then, but but, I mean, they knew they obviously knew
Yeah.
they were going to get this
The-
before the building was even sold.
Yeah, this was not issued to the developer. It was issued to CHI and essentially said, if you develop a project and you develop it in accordance with all of the regulations, et cetera, we support that. That's what it said. It was not written to the developer. We couldn't authorize the developer to do anything.
So supposing things, this was, supposing things didn't fall into place
Yeah.
as they.
And that would be it. It'd be null and void.
They took a big risk.
I'm sorry?
They took a big risk.
Yeah, they essentially took a risk. Wasn't our risk.
It's not gonna have losing any consequence of thing.
Yeah, it seems like an awful big risk. It seems a little strange, and I'm sure, that's part of the big problem here.
Yeah, understood.
There's a lot that doesn't seem that it falls into place, and, so it brings up questions to us, and it certainly brings up questions to the residents. Again, not saying that we don't have to do better than what we're doing now, and we stated that from the beginning, but there just seems to be a lot of questions that seem like they're really not answered. So, Kiana Abad, am I saying this right, Kiana? I don't want to say your name wrong. Abadi?
Kiana Abadi.
Abadi.
Hi. My name is Kiana Abadi, and I'm from Young Long Island for Justice, and I'm speaking in support of the Jericho Transitional Housing Project. The opponents of this project seem solely interested in kicking struggling families out of their $1 million zip code and into the middle and working class communities. Freeport, Hempstead, Uniondale, and other South Shore communities already have saturated affordable housing options and have been dealing with a housing crisis for years. This type of class warfare and NIMBYism is exactly the reason why Nassau County is marred by lawsuits regarding our lack of access to housing. The only reason we're at this hearing is because the Ivory Tower parents were not allowed to use their money earlier to convince their electeds to stop this project in the first place. If this was genuinely about transparency and the concern about the application process, we would be talking about how to improve it, not trying to stop it and claiming the legal process was illegitimate. On the topic of transparency, I'm doubly concerned that it was deemed appropriate to have a last-minute hearing announced for a day and time that most working-class families are unavailable. This same legislative body saw it fit to have 2 nightly hearings until late into the evening, until almost midnight, about assessment to allow every person present to make a statement. The timing of this hearing allows the privileged communities a fuller advantage, being heard first and the most because they can afford the luxury of working from home. If we are not interested in being like the city, as so often mentioned by said parents and legislators alike, then we should be focusing on how housing is built and less on the where. The city rejects housing developments constantly and has been the toughest housing critic and has the toughest zoning laws in the state. Their NIMBYism has exacerbated their housing crisis, made evident by the same articles these concerned parents of Jericho share on social media. If our goal is to prevent the problems we see our neighbors dealing with, then we should allow and support this housing development to move forward. We should encourage developers to replace hotels and motels with housing developments that incorporate affordable housing units. Those units should be developed in every zip code on the island, especially when the project helps struggling families. We have a growing housing crisis in Nassau County. It seems that the concerned parents struggle to comprehend what housing insecurity is and have no interest in solving it. They want to preserve their polished marble homes from undesirables. It is every community's responsibility to demand more quality and fair, affordable housing across Nassau County. Wealth does not protect you from your problems of your neighbors. It only exposes your classism.
Saban Komatsu.
Hi, my name is Sivan Komatsu. I'm a Jericho resident and 2017 Jericho High School graduate. And I cannot believe that I'm standing here today. I cannot believe that our neighbors' safety and livelihoods are up for debate. I cannot believe that parents are attempting to hide blatant classism and hate under the guise of concern. I cannot believe that discrimination, fear-mongering, and the weaponization of class privilege have gotten so far. I understand the frustration of not feeling like you were given adequate information about something happening in your community. That's valid. What I cannot understand is utilizing that frustration as a political tool to keep homeless families homeless. I cannot understand having a goal to stop the facility altogether, to quote Vartanov and Albert, the facility being a place for homeless families to receive the services they need and deserve to secure permanent housing. I cannot understand going out of your way to ensure innocent children do not have a safe place to sleep at night. I cannot understand claiming to care about the homeless while being the reason homeless children are stuck in dangerous, unsanitary living conditions and calling taking care of them a burden and waste of taxpayer money. The law is clear. Transitional housing facilities are not subject to the town zoning laws that other structures are. The research is clear. Homeless individuals are no more likely to commit crimes, with the exception of camping ordinances, than housed individuals are. The logic is clear. Placing homeless families in a safer, more secure facility, resulting in the shutting down of the motels, will make Jericho safer. The reality is clear. The Jericho Family Support Center will provide the services that our neighbors need to secure permanent housing. Homeless people, as an entity, are not violent. Using the legal system to keep homeless families homeless is violent. Spreading collective fear-mongering lies is the danger to our community, not homeless children. These homeless children won't corrupt the Jericho schools, as so many parents are worried about, but the classist and discriminatory ideals the concerned parents are instilling in their children will and is corrupting the Jericho schools. Homelessness isn't the problem. Homeless people aren't the problem, I'm sorry. The institutions, groups, and individual people who uphold the systems that drive families into homelessness and keep them there are the problem. For each of you legislators, I have a packet with our petition supporters. I printed it last night and emailed it. The numbers of signatures have gone up. I can send it again if you'd like. I hope you read everyone's names and comments, knowing that we are trying to do the right thing and we need your help. Thank you.
Erica Hill. Erica's not here. Okay. Melissa Keno?
Hi. I've been a resident in the Jericho School Districts for 29 years, so I've seen a lot, and I know that there's always been homeless families, and they've been welcomed, and I also know of families in particular that were in my children's years that fell on hard times, ended up moving into lower income housing, and they managed and figured it out. I have no problem with taking care of our own. I don't like the whole process of this revolving door, and I don't like also the fact that when you gave, I don't know who it was who spoke because everyone's got masks on, so whoever it was that was giving the number of 2 years versus 6 months, it doesn't make sense. because since it is a revolving door, that 6 months is not 6 months. It's the same 2 years. It's just on different variations of that 6 months. So that number needs to be readdressed. That's number one. That bothered me because I didn't think it was accurate. I also worry not only about COVID, but meningitis, other things, other vaccinations, that you're going to be having so many families living among each other like a dormitory. That also will be providing health issues for the other children that are residents of Jericho that have to be vaccinated. I just feel that there are so many issues that are underlying here that finding group housing for the amount of money that's being spent, I feel that they would be better off finding individual rentals, apartment rentals, to house our community members that have fallen on hard times. And I suggest that other communities do the same. I don't understand why Jericho needs to be the place where everybody comes and goes for 6 months. I don't even understand the stability for the children to be in a school for 6 months or 9 months. And then depending on, since they said that the day they come and need housing is the day they get it, you're not talking about September. It could happen in October. It could happen November. Now you add the 6 to 9 months. Where are you? There's no continuity. I think what we need is a better housing option for these underprivileged people and these people in need. And to address that woman, not all of us have no empathy. We all do care. And we're not living in marble homes. We're living in homes that have families and children, and that we care about not only our family but everyone's family. And there just has to be a better way than what is being suggested. Also, what nobody has mentioned is, are we getting rid of those motels?
Etan Misulovin. Cheryl Keshner. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you
I'm going to speak on behalf of Etan.
Okay, and just
I'll fill one out. My name is Shariar Chowdhury. I live in Jericho School District. So I just want to make something clear. This is not about not wanting to help the less privileged. This is truly about transparency. Now, Nassau County, the previous members of previous administration's criminal indictments, the ink is still not dry on those. And for the commissioner to sit here today and say it was merely a thought in February and then it got put on a back burner, but the guy went and spent millions of dollars developing this property, he had to have some assurance from the commissioner's office. And we talked about some type of confidentiality. How can you keep a project like this under confidentiality when the fire department, the local emergency services, no one was brought up to speed? Now, the taxpayers who are living in this town and paying the salaries, are they not entitled to any type of heads up as to what is about to happen right next door? This property is less than half a mile away from the school. I think that's been beaten to death already. The numbers that are being quoted are super manipulated. There's really no cost savings here. No one has ever, 5 times we've asked the question, are the motels being phased out? No one is able to answer that question. This is absolutely smells like someone is trying to do someone a favor, because there was no reason to not be transparent about this. And someone from the commissioner's office said, this is a fantastic site. What qualifies you to make that statement, madam? At one point you say, zoning, this is not, site selection is not our responsibility. We're passing the buck down to the state. And then you make statements on the record, this is a fantastic site. Please tell us, what is the difference between fantastic and non-fantastic site? What qualifies you to be the person to make such statements. And why not a site a little bit away from the school district, where actual school building is, to be the fantastic site? So this is not about not wanting to help the homeless. This is not about not wanting. This is not about us trying to live in our marble homes. Excuse me for the successes that I've accomplished. I was also homeless when I came to this country in 1989. I did not do any bashing to those who were privileged. I did what this country is promising. You work hard and you get. I'm here to help. I have no problem helping anyone. But the point is, where is the transparency in this government? Or is this administration following the tracks of the last administration, which ended up in criminal indictments? Thank you.
Cheryl Keshner.
Good morning. My name's Cheryl Keshner. I am a Nassau County resident. I have been an advocate for Long Island's low-income, underserved, and homeless communities for nearly 30 years. And so I have a great deal of experience and knowledge regarding what this population faces and many of the struggles that they are dealing with. I prepared some notes, but I'm just hearing so many misconceptions here that I really want to address some of those. Homeless people could be any of us, okay? As a young man said before, he's sleeping in a car. Some people are living double, tripled up in housing because they can't afford the rents here on Long Island. That technically is homeless. People who have dealt with domestic violence sometimes have to escape those situations and go to a safer environment. That could happen to any of us. And many of us, as we've seen through this pandemic, are just a paycheck away from homelessness. It is not a crime to be homeless, and being homeless does not mean that one is a criminal. The type of housing that's being discussed here in terms of creating these larger family shelters is not what someone here seemed to think was a situation where people are sleeping on bunk beds in a large open room. People will have their own units where they are, able to keep their families together, where they're not hopping from hotel to hotel on a weekly basis, which causes a tremendous amount of instability, for these families and for our communities. They are safer because these hotels will be monitored in terms of sanitation, in terms of being provided with services for the children, with parents getting job readiness skills, counseling, help securing housing, and other types of supports. So homeless people exist in our community whether we like it or not. We may not recognize them. They could be any one of us, okay? But placing them in a more stable environment than what they currently have is a smart idea. I work with homeless people in Suffolk County, too, where there are some large shelters, and there are, far more services there, than I've seen in Nassau County, where families are placed in hotels and where they are not provided with any type of follow-up. So, I would suggest that people just do a little more research on this without jumping to conclusions about who homeless people are. Let's not fear our neighbors based on their economic status, based on their race, based on what we think a homeless person is, because it could be any of us. As I said, I prepared notes, but they've gone out the window. But at any rate, again, homelessness is also caused by a lack of affordable housing. We do need to ensure that we do have more affordable housing options for our community members, that the DSS shelter rate is increased so that people can get out of emergency housing and into permanent housing. And I just will call on my neighbors to open their hearts up to everybody in their communities, okay? It could be any one of you tomorrow. Thank you.
Chupwe Luo. And I apologize if I didn't say your name correctly.
Yes, that's correct. All right. I have some words with the people on the other side of the aisle. First of all, make no mistakes. We have compassion with people. we have compassion with people. We want to help them. We want to better help them. However, the thing is, we also hold those principles dear in our heart, that the government has to conduct its behavior in a transparent, fair, and lawful way. Transparency, fairness, and lawfulness. And also very important, for such a long time, we should have been notified of this matter, but we haven't been to. Second of all, Jericho is a very small community. And we are taking in such a big number of people coming into the community. What's the impact to the community? Monetary, and some even a non-monetary impact to our community. This, we have no way to input into this process to better help those people who are suffering. Third of all, we keep hearing about overriding town zoning law, but I believe still there has a way, zoning is a way to protect not only the people living in this community, but also people, some homeless people may coming into this community. So there has to be a balance between the two sides. Another thing I want to emphasize to people is that I think it's very important because...
Could you just put your mask on? I wasn't even focused that
sorry.
you didn't have it on.
Sorry.
And remind everybody that they need to leave it on.
I'm sorry for that. I came from a communist country. I keep hearing about movement. What kind of movement is this? I came to America just to believe that the government is of the people, by the people, and for the people. We have to have a way to give our input. I believe this is very important. I have this American dream. Please help me preserve this American dream. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Avianti Percy? Oh, we did, okay. Nia Adams?
Okay. Hello, my name is Nia Adams. I'm a community organizer with the Long Island Progressive Coalition. I'm also a resident of Jericho, New York. I'm here today to say yes in my backyard and that I fully support the creation and implementation of housing for in-needs families in my community because housing is a human right. My family has lived in Jericho for 30 years. We are also an immigrant family, and we have often been made to feel like we don't belong. I live in a community where I'm often asked who I work for and if I'm the cleaning girl because they know exactly who they expect in their community. It is a dog whistle. We know that the degrading remarks against housing are rooted in racism, xenophobia, and other stereotypes that are not rooted in reality. Long Island remains to be one of the nation's most racially and socioeconomically segregated regions by design for reasons such as this, and the research backs this up. Newsday just released an expose in November of 2019 about the continued redlining that happens here in Long Island. We are in the midst of a global pandemic that has devastated communities, with Long Island being one of the hardest hit regions. And we face an economic and housing crisis which none of us have seen in our lifetime. Jericho, however, does have the means and resources to help alleviate some of these disparities. We put all of our communities at risk when we don't provide basic human rights and services. I've witnessed my neighbors make baseless, hurtful, and harmful accusations. We do know, statistically, however, that our communities are safer when we provide services such as housing. I support this as a homeowner and as someone who has a small child in the district. This housing unit also has improved social and support services that the other housing shelters do not, that would help better help families find permanent and secure housing. I reject wholeheartedly this NIMBYism, and my family as taxpayers fully support housing for in-needs families. And I would also suggest that as the opposition has raised over $80K for legal representation, if they care so much about providing for other people, that they should directly give to those people and perhaps pay their rent if you don't want them in homeless shelters in your so-called neighborhood. Again, my name is Nia Adams. I fully support this housing unit as a resident in Jericho and as a taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Nia. Pearl Jacobs?
That the mic be clean, please, because I have a 100-year-old grandmother that I see, and I practice strict social distancing. Listen, I practice this microphone is something. Thank you. Thank you. I'm a man. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Is that cleaning? I don't know if that's.
And Pearl, we've missed seeing you.
I miss you too, and thank you so much. And you did a great job with the mass distributions and everything. I've seen you a lot as well as the other legislators, and I'm glad to see you, and I'm glad to see everyone in good health, and I pray that your family is in good health as well. So I'm here today. I'm not here, maybe I need to put my glasses on, that would help. I am not here to speak against homeless shelters. I'm here to speak against the disproportionate number of homeless shelters that are placed in communities of color. 74% of homeless shelters in Nassau County that are sanctioned by the Nassau County Department of Social Services are located in Hempstead, Uniondale, Roosevelt, Freeport, and Lakeview. The clustering of shelter homes in communities of color speaks to systematic and economic discrimination. My husband and I own a home in Uniondale, and as every Nassau County homeowner knows, we pay high property taxes, and speaking for Uniondale, our quality of life could be better. The saturation of shelter homes in our community, specifically single male shelter homes, has further deteriorated the quality of life for Uniondale residents. Regarding transparency, there was no public input, nor were residents of Uniondale informed of plans to place shelter homes in our communities. These homes just popped up, one after another. It is a fact that shelter homes place additional burdens on the community, schools, sanitation, police, etc., especially our underserved communities, of which Uniondale is one. As a community that brands itself a global village, Uniondale residents embrace diversity and inclusion. We understand that there are people in Nassau County where opportunities for a comfortable middle or upper class lifestyle remain out of reach due to a myriad of reasons. As a global community, Uniondale welcomes and cares for those who are in need, especially displaced women and children and our veterans. All communities should share this sentiment. Communities of color should not have to bear the burden entirely of Nassau County's homeless population. We all have to share the burden of the poor and underprivileged, as they are our brothers and sisters. During this pandemic, we have seen a transformation in our country concerning wealth and social status. Unfortunately, many people have lost jobs, businesses, and homes. People that never ventured to a food pantry before are now standing on long lines for food. As a county and a country where we should exercise more compassion and empathy, especially during these difficult times. But again, I emphasize that communities of color should not have to be burdened with this vast, disproportionate number of shelter homes. I live by the mantra that my grandmother Rachel, who is now 100 years old, drilled into me as a small child. She always told me that a closed hand, nothing goes out and nothing comes in. You must give in order to receive, and thus for the grace of God go you and I. Thank you.
Thank you, Pearl. Heidi Sand?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay? My name is Heidi Sanft. I'm the Vice President of the Nostrand Garden Civic Association in Uniondale. My family has owned a home in the Hempstead, right on the Hempstead-Uniondale border since 1967. I've also lived in Manhattan. I've lived in Seacliff, different neighborhoods of Long Island. Here are my thoughts. Shelter homes need to be spread equally throughout Nassau County. As Pearl Jacobs just mentioned, 80%, I'm going to repeat that, 80% of homeless shelters in Nassau County are currently located in Uniondale, Hempstead, Roosevelt, Freeport, and Lakeview. We, the civic leaders in Uniondale, are requesting a moratorium on shelter homes in Uniondale. When it comes to homeless people, it could be any of us. So I have nothing against people needing help. It needs to be spread equally, though, through Nassau County. This is one Long Island, and everyone needs to remember that, no matter how much money you have. I have a friend who lives in Old Westbury. She used to live in Jericho. I have friends who live in Bayville. I'm in East Meadow all the time. Whoever you are, remember, you're first a human being, and you need to respect your fellow human beings and build them up instead of saying, I'm afraid they're going to ruin my community. This particular shelter in Jericho, I've been reading, it will have meals for the people, job training, child care. The children will go to the Jericho schools, but once they move, they'll only be allowed to stay there through the end of that year. Then they'll have to go to the next school. Don't let fear rule your life. Think for a moment about being part of a greater humanity, and especially during these trying times. Do the right thing. Thank you. I should say, if you don't know already, I support the shelter home in Jericho. Thank you.
Our final speaker is Kevin McKenna.
Good afternoon, Kevin McKenna. Some of the comments that I've heard here today, both from some of the opposition as well as from some of you legislators, are completely outrageous. First off, I just learned yesterday that Nassau County has this Health and Social Services Committee. The fact that the Jericho residents were blindsided and you compounded by announcing a hearing a day before and not letting the Jericho community know about this is simply outrageous again. Legislator Walker, as the chairperson of this Social Services Committee, I was stunned when I was listening outside at how you are asking questions to defend zoning and safety in this particular location, which one of the Jericho residents painted as some dismal motel. It was not a dismal motel. It was a Hampton Inn. It was beautiful. But for you to be asking questions about the safety of the people going into this facility is good. But you're a legislator in Hicksville. I don't see you making any public statements at all of concern about the safety of the homeless people that are laying all over your district in Hicksville. If you've made any statements about that or been involved in that, then I apologize. But I've searched, and I don't find them. So for you to try to defend the town of Oyster Bay, who is clearly utilizing this issue as a political statement, is unbelievable. And I want to tell, especially the CHI people right now on the record, that I have in writing, okay, the town of Oyster Bay is utilizing zoning. How about the four hotels that were in the area that...
Mr. McKenna, if you have questions about what we are discussing
I'm not asking
today,
questions. I'm making a statement, and I have every right to do that. There are 4 hotels or motels that the homeless clearly have been put in, admitted here today, acknowledged by everybody. Where was the town of Oyster Bay concerned about zoning for those hotels? I didn't see it. How is the town of Oyster Bay allowing the Millridge Inn in Jericho to operate without licenses, and they're concerned about homeless people in Jericho? And this is really important. I have in writing right now from the town of Oyster Bay 2 days ago. I inquired with them because they just approved a resolution to put cars on 150 Miller Place on an unpaved surface, and I pointed out to them that they can't do that. And I have in writing, this will help CHI, in writing, the town of Oyster Bay said to me, we do not have to abide by laws of the town. The town of Oyster Bay, in writing, has told me that they do not have to abide by licenses of the town.
Expired, please.
And in closing, it's disgusting that you, Miss Walker, are so concerned about safety of these people in that hotel, but you could give 2 hoots about all the homeless people that are laying all around your district. Thank you very much.
Commissioner and staff, I want to thank you very much for being here today. Did you want to add anything, or?
Okay. No, not at this time, but thank you again for hearing us, and certainly if there's any other questions that come up, we're happy to get back to you. Thank you.
I just want to also thank you, Commissioner, and your staff for doing a wonderful job today.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.